My name is Anthony Vigliotti. I am the Chief Product Officer here at Adlib. I've been with the company tick over 2.5 years, so trending towards 3 years now. My entire professional career has been targeted at workflow automation and business process optimization, focused largely around the document. So I found a great home here at Adlib, and I think we have some great technology and value to showcase for you today. I'm also joined here by Kunal. So Kunal, would you spend a few minutes to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Kunal Bergotra. I'm the Senior Solutions Engineer here at Adlib. I actually have spent my entire career here at Adlib and actually am coming from a product team originally and joining from Anthony's team over to our pre-sales team. I'm extremely excited today to be able to walk you through the demonstration and help kind of walk through some of the value adds that we have within the platform itself. I'm excited to get into it.
Hey, thank you, Kunal. So what you're about to witness today is largely a conversation between Kunal and myself. Instead of the standard presentation material and standard demo, we thought that we would highlight maybe a conversation between the two of us, largely grounded on voice of customer that we've heard from many of you and others in other industries. So that's what you're about to witness today. So Kunal, if you can go to the next slide, please, that'd be great. So the first thing I wanted to do is spend a few short moments introducing yourself to Adlib if you're not familiar already. Adlib is a multinational trusted global brand. We have many customers in largely regulated industries. That's where we focus. Where Adlib really thrives is on mission critical document workflow, where a document is central to content that is required for you to complete your business. So we really look for chaos, and our job is to make certain that we take that chaotic document and structure to make that a document of record and to properly format that content so it can be used inside your organization and also become compliant ready for any regulatory authorities that you may have and deal with. So Adlib has been doing this for 23 plus years. We process billions upon billions of documents. We don't know exactly how many, but we know it's well into the billions. We focus on automation and doing this at scale with high reliability in some of the most complex architectures in the world. When you're dealing with things like nuclear energy, when you're dealing with things like NASA, when you're dealing with things like the federal government, we need to make certain that we really comply with the standard practices around developing secure software, but also any of the security metrics and processes that these customers put in place to protect their environments and their data. So this is a little bit about Adlib. We're going to move quickly to the next slide, which is the agenda for today. We're going to be focusing this demonstration on SOP, so standard operating procedure. We've collected a few generic SOP type documents that we'll be using to showcase this technology and workflow today. You'll see how we're able to standardize and ingest these documents from various sources and various file types at scale. We're going to be using automation to show how we reduce the manual labor required to get these documents ready for your downstream processes and for potential submission to the regulatory authority. We will be validating and checking for compliance across these many technical attributes. And then largely we'll show how this data lands potentially in a line of business application in a format that can be easily consumed. We call it like AI ready type content. Or just downstream line of business type content. So those are the four things we're about to showcase today. If you move to the next slide, we'll talk really quickly around, I still don't see the next slide, about the day in the life of this SOP coordinator. So for the purpose of this demo, we've curated standard steps that we see around standard operating procedure development and approval cycles. This is not to say that it matches exactly your particular workflow. Once again, this is curated for many customers, but we do believe this is likely close enough for you to get a technical understanding of the types of things that Adlib might be able to help you with. So what you're going to see in this particular demo are two separate demos. The first demo is we're truly going to take you through the day in the life without showing you any of the bells and whistles and what's happening behind the scenes. We're just going to show you what an SOP coordinator might be observing and the way they interact with their documents when Adlib is in place. The second part of the demo is for those that are more technical. We'll take you behind the scenes so that you get a better understanding of how some of these things configured and some of the more kind of in-depth capabilities that Adlib can provide to you for workflows such as this. But a little bit more about this particular workflow. So we have 4 steps here. Step number 1 is the standard draft intake and standardization. So you have a document, or your organization has a document that is very, very early stages. It needs to be stamped as draft. But at this point, you still need to get to a point where the document has some consistency, and there's some header footer information around version and author and effective dates and so on and so forth. That's pretty much what happens in draft mode. Now, that draft then ultimately makes its way to reviewers, plural, where there's some internal collaboration around that draft document. And at this point, they're adding comments and annotations to the document. And once that is complete, we then lock that for editing and move it to its final stages for completeness, which takes you to steps 3 and 4, where we're taking that document, now converting it to a PDF-A for archival type document, version 1.4 or 1.7. We have the ability to add all the standard things that are required for your internal processes and regulatory submissions, like table of contents and headers and footers and hyperlinks. Any metadata that may be required, we have the ability to pull out. You'll see that as part of the demo. If there's anything I'm missing, you'll clearly understand how that falls into part of the demo. And then we'll also showcase how a standard operating procedure typically isn't one document. It's a merging, it's a coming together of many documents that may be in your content library. So this may include, the standard operating procedure itself. It may include CAD files. It may include diagrams. It may include imagery. So the whole notion here is to finally assemble and compile the final output, which you'll see in the final stages. So what we're going to do as part of this demo is we're going to break this down into 3 digestible chunks, starting with chunk number 1. So that is the standard SOP draft intake and standardization. So Kunal, with that upfront background, I'm going to pass this over to you. And why don't you first showcase the type of documents that we'll be bringing into this particular workflow, and then I'll follow on with the conversation afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So just want to confirm you can see my new screen now.
Yes, I can see the screen, and the size looks great.
Okay, great. So what we're going to be working with today is a variety of different documents that, once again, are kind of tailored towards being generic manufacturing documents. I'll walk you through what we have here. So again, we have a couple different file types here. Now, one is this DWG file, which is typically an AutoCAD drawing. I already have it opened up here, and thankfully I have software that allows me to open up and view this drawing. But of course, we do know that there are cases where someone may not have that software readily available or installed on their VM or on their machine to be able to see this drawing and be able to open it up the way I have here. So over the course of the demo, we'll also be able to kind of walk through how Adlib helps you out with that from a CAD standpoint. Now, closing out of that, we also have a couple more files in here. We have an image here, which kind of just depicts a flowchart procedure. We have an SOP here. We actually have 2 SOPs here. I'll focus on this SOP first. So this one details proper hand washing procedure. You can see here that it's in version 1. You can see the effective date, the author, the approver, and what the typical review cycle might look like. And as we scroll down, you can see that this is just a generic Word document. We have a couple different sections here, no table of contents or bookmarks or anything right now. Just a couple different sections here that walk through the purpose of the document, the scope, responsibilities, proper hand washing procedure, ideally running warm water, so on and so forth. And then similarly, we have one more SOP down here, which is for cold storage access and material retrieval, which again, very similar, just a Word document with no strong structure or formatting in terms of like a table of contents or bookmarks, headers, footers, anything like that just yet.
So if I just replay what I thought I heard, the 2 SOP documents have similar types of content, but the structure is very different. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll also just hear, it's real clear to see you got this DWG file, this GIF file, which is an image file, and obviously those 2 Word documents. Can you just speak shortly around the types of document file types that we can support? You got 3 here, but what about some of the others?
Yeah, definitely. So Adlib has a really cool broad support of 300 plus different file types. And once we get to the technical part of the demo, we can actually walk through what some of that looks like in the UI, but you'll be able to see that we have easy configuration for Excel formats, PowerPoint formats, various image formats. Let's say you have legacy documents that have been sitting around for a very long time, where now suddenly something needs to be done with them, or they need to be archived long term. Adlib has really, really great broad generic support for a ton of different file types. This is just a subset of what we can work with.
Okay, so we should have probably mentioned during the day in the life, what we're showcasing today is a series of folders that are going to represent different
Yeah.
blocks of this particular day in the life routine. Can you talk a little bit how this might really be deployed in a true production environment with real end users?
Yeah, definitely. So when you're not using folders like we will be over the course of this demo, you may have this set up in like your own QMS or your own SharePoint server. And in reality, you might have triggers where you have a set of documents in here, and typically you have like a simple button or something that allows you to just click it, and all of these documents will be transferred over to a step in your workflow. And if we go back to the day in the life, perhaps that first step is going to be the review, or even before the review, just the initial authoring step. So what happens on your end is really you click a button, something happens to those documents on the back end, and then they're placed back in your SharePoint or in your content management server with the appropriate watermarks and formatting that you were looking for. And that process can continue out as you kind of work your way through the funnel from step 1 to 4, if we just kind of stick to the day in the life images or day in the life depiction that we saw in the PowerPoint. So what I'll be doing in today's demo is really trying to emulate that over the course of using network folders to kind of take it from step 1, 2, 3, and 4. But of course, there are definitely more streamlined ways to do that using your own internal systems. And the beauty of Adlib, once again, as middleware, is our ability to be able to connect to those systems effectively and support those use cases end to end.
All right, so if you don't mind, just to remind the audience, can you go back to the PowerPoint and just highlight what we're doing in step one, and then we'll kick off step one.
Absolutely. So what we're going to be doing here is just confirming you can see the PowerPoint now.
We can, yes.
Perfect. So what we're going to be doing here in step 1 is we'll be taking in these documents that I just stepped through. We'll ingest them. Adlib will convert them to PDF, but we're not doing any other crazy formatting right now. So we're not adding a table of contents. We're not going to be bookmarking the document. We will stamp this with a draft watermark, so it's clear when you open the document what step of the process we're in. And then we'll also start taking a look at these documents for formatting, approved terminology, and making sure that if there's anything else we possibly want to populate in the document. So for example, if we want to apply a header or a footer that lets us know the effective date, we'll apply that information in the document as well.
I appreciate it. Let's kick off step number one.
Awesome. So I will head back over to our demo. And what you'll see here now is we were just taking a look at our documents in this folder. And I now have 3 documents, which we'll walk through each one over the course of the demo that'll kind of step by step take us through what we saw in our day in the life slide. We'll start with our authoring step, which is our very first step. And I'm going to go ahead and hit that batch file there. And what that's doing is that's actually releasing, oh, apologies, I probably had to restart the end there because I logged out for inactivity. What you can see here is all of those files were now just released at once to Adlib, and all 4, thanks to Adlib's speed and throughput package and our high performance engines, I just have one engine on the server that's currently processing all 4 of these documents in parallel. And you can see here with one quick refresh that all of those documents have already been completed. You can see that all of them completed in about 15 seconds or less, roughly. And if we go over to our output now, what I'll be able to show you is whenever you're ready, we can start kind of stepping through what that looks like and what we saw in the day of the life slide, see what that actually looks like in the documents on the other end.
All right, perfect. So just a reminder, this is step number one for draft mode. So feel free to open up any file you wish and showcase what we've done with step one.
Yeah, so we could start with that DWG file that we saw. So as you can see here, first and foremost, I'll scroll to the very top. You can see that we've applied a header here. We have our Adlib manufacturing webinar. We also have the date and time that this was received. So about 1:14 p.m. on August 6, 2025. And if we scroll down, you can also see that we have our drawing that's been converted to PDF format. So now, even if you didn't have a CAD viewer the way I had at the very start, but you needed to see what was in this document, just by using Adlib to simply convert it to PDF, I'm now able to pop open this document. I can grab any text that I'm looking for. And then the last thing I'll mention here is if I close this and open up another document, you saw that we had a draft watermark there. If I pop open one of our SOPs, for example, you'll see that I also have a draft watermark here for this 1.0 version SOP for the proper hand washing procedure.
Okay, great. So just one of the things I wanted to point out about these DWG files, or any CAD file for that matter, One of the things that we've heard from customers is, they have people that are quote unquote walking the line. And what these people are doing is, simply walking the manufacturing line and, checking to determine if things are as they should be. And they need access to files, they need access to drawings, they need access to these SOPs, and they're not with a full-blown PC, they're with their tablet. So what we are able to do is take any document that may be within your environment and convert that to a tablet-ready viewer, by way of PDF, so that at any time, someone who's walking the line has full access to any document they require at any time without the need for the native application itself, which is expensive to license, or if it even runs on a tablet at all. Okay, anything else you'd like to add, Kunal, about step number 1?
That kind of takes us to the end of step 1 so far. Yep.
Okay, so let's flip back to the PowerPoint if you don't mind. I'll remind the audience as to what's happening in the next step, which is step number 2. And
Yeah.
When you're ready, please do that.
Yeah, so what we're going to do now is, now that we have all of these documents, they've been stamped with draft, and now that we've reviewed these documents, what we want to be able to do is in this next step, send over any documents that had any changes that are being made. So over the course of version 1 to version 2, are there any revisions that have been made? Is there any feedback that we need to compile? And if so, as the end user, you ultimately want to be able to see what those comments were, what those changes were within the document, what were the differences from version 1 to version 2. And so what we're going to be doing in this next step now is ingesting any documents that had any revisions or changes, and then exposing that to the end user so they can easily keep track of what was going on with their documents. And then once again, similar to how we stamped all of those documents with draft, anything that kind of goes through this review and internal collaboration phase will be stamped with review complete, so that the end user again can know that this document has been reviewed and all these changes have been taken a look at by an actual human along the way.
All right, so obviously we're using our network folder here today, but this is a good example of, if you were using a QMS or a document management system, that this would be a trigger that the end user would eventually see or see in their
Yeah.
environment, which is standard operating procedure for them. So why don't you
Right.
take us through step number 2, if you don't mind?
Perfect. So what I'll do is, once again, we will release those files in. And if we take a look at our dashboard, you can see that only one file has been brought into this step. So that tells us that we currently have a file out of those existing files that we just submitted in step 1 that was moved over from the authoring stage over into this collaboration review stage. So while that process is in the background, what we'll be able to understand, and what Adlib is currently doing right now, is going back to that slide, exposing all of the changes that were made. But we don't just want to expose that. What we're actually doing is we're using our AI link, which is our LLM powered feature, and we're actually doing a summarization, not of the content of the document quite yet, but we're actually focusing on the changes in the document. So ideally, what we should see on the other end is all of those changes surfaced up in the PDF, and then also a JSON file that'll help summarize, using our AI link, that'll help summarize what comments were made, or any changes made as a result of any of the comments that were applied to the document, so that someone can easily view, even without opening the document, someone can easily view and have a good understanding of exactly what happened in between versions.
Okay, outstanding. So it looks like that's complete, and there should be documents now in the output folder, which there are. So please take us through what landed here as a result of step 2.
For sure. So what I'll do is I'll actually start with this notepad file here. And so let's say, before you even want to go ahead and dive into the document itself, you just want a quick view of what the summarization was. You can see here that in our response, first and foremost, we have a summarization of all of the comments that might have been added over the course of that revision period. So we had one comment here where there was a suggestion for explicitly including packaging areas and the scope to address overlooked or high-risk areas. And you can also see here that the LLM captured that there were no changes noted as a result of that comment. Another comment here recommended aligning SOP requirements with a corporate approved list. But once again, the LLM did not detect any changes. And instead of going through every comment, what we can kind of see as a result at the very end here is the LLM is saying, as a result, we didn't see any updates made to any of these references or comments, but it did make an observation saying that the comments ultimately aim to enhance the clarity, compliance, and usability of the SOP. However, we haven't noticed any changes in direct response to any comments that were applied thus far. So it's trying to do its best job to figure out any input that was made in the document, and if any changes were made as a result of those comments or any of those inputs. Now, what we also have here is the output PDF. So what you'll notice is a couple things. Once again, when we get to the technical part of the demo, we can sort of walk through how this was all configured and how how easy or hard it is to set this up. But what you can see here is very right off the bat, we have our draft watermark, which has now been changed to a review complete watermark. You can see very briefly over here in the version history, the version was updated from 1 to 2. You can see that the 1 is now struck out with a red text, and then the 2 is in blue text, and that's underlined here as well. And as we start to scroll through, you'll be able to see that, again, we still don't have a table of contents, bookmarks. We haven't gone into that level of formatting yet. But now you can start to see, if you recall to that summarization, that first comment that we saw here, that's all being captured currently. So we're tracking any comments that were added. If I continue to scroll down, you'll see that all comments are captured in the document. Any changes or revisions that might have been made over the course of that document have been applied as well. And then if we scroll to the very bottom, you can also see in our revision history that someone has gone ahead and edited this section as well to state, I've taken a look at this document, I've reviewed it, I've approved it, and I've added in all of my changes that I needed to as a result of the input that was added in this step.
Okay, great. So the PDF is clear to me. It looks like we updated the watermark, have captured all the comments and any revision history that may be within that document. So that's exceptional. I have a question about the JSON file.
Yeah.
Typically, most end users don't really deal with JSON files, and the structure really isn't that legible for an end user. So, why did we generate a JSON file, and how might the line of business use that JSON file? I guess that is the question.
Yeah, so JSON is typically chosen because once Adlib has completed this step that we just saw, the transformation, and whether we're extracting content, whether we're summarizing content, finalizing that information in a format such as JSON means that that's now ready to be integrated into downstream manufacturing systems that you likely have set up in the funnel. A JSON file is very easily consumable by other AI-enabled downstream processes. So if you want to route this to other key operational platforms that you have, like your quality management systems, or your manufacturing execution systems, or electronic document control systems, you are now prepped to do so with what we provided back to you here, and to make sure that that's now easily consumable further downstream to your lines of businesses.
Okay, great. And I noticed you were using GPT-4 OpenAI.
Yeah.
At least when you open a JSON file, that's what the header said.
Yeah.
So can you help us understand how an end user or a company might leverage their own AI tech stack in a model such as this?
Yeah, so very simply, Adlib does not host their own AI services, and this isn't up in our cloud or anything like that. We provide a bring your own LLM service. So essentially, whatever LLM that your business has chosen to move forward with for all the reasons that you want it, all including your security reasons, efficiency reasons, the results you typically get out of it, that LLM is what you bring to us and say that this is what you want to use. And then Adlib will establish a connection with your LLM to be able to help you execute your summarizations, your attribute extractions, and all of that is done in sort of your environment and your tech stack. And then the last thing I'll mention as well is that that is a stateless transaction. So in other words, once that transaction's been completed, there's no memory of it afterwards. That these outputs that you see in this output folder are provided back to you, and then it's essentially, I call it quote unquote like wiped from memory. So there's no concept of the more you submit to it, the more you're training the model. And since it's in your own, data warehouse instead of our cloud, there's no concept of, what you're doing is potentially helping a competitor train their documents. There's no notion of that with this sort of secure concept of bring your own LLM.
Great, thank you. So I think that's a good summary and understanding of step number 2. We still have 2 steps remaining. So if you don't mind flipping back to the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And we'll showcase steps 3 and 4. I think it probably makes sense based on what we're doing in steps 3 and 4 to merge them together, which is what we've done as part of this demo. So can you please walk through what will happen with steps 3 and 4, and then we'll move right to the demo.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your point, what we're going to do is we're kind of going to do the rest of what's left in steps 3 and 4 all together in one go, essentially. So what we now want to do is, starting in step 3, we want to make sure that now that we've gone through our initial authoring, our internal review, that now we're ready to start formatting this end document the way we want it to. So let's start applying our table of contents. Let's start applying our hyperlinks, our bookmarks. If there's anything that we want to essentially flag that was incomplete, or if we want to make sure that it is PDFA compliant, make sure that all of that has been checked for as well. Similar, kind of following our flow of updating the watermarks based on where we are in the funnel. Now we want this to say that it's approved and pending release, so that someone can again easily understand by opening the document what step of the sort of pipeline this is in. And then finally, going to that assembly, we had a set of documents that we started with at the start. We had a document that came through that needed some additional revision. And now we want to go ahead and take the final revisions of every single one of those documents and merge them together. So let's get a cover page in there as well. Let's get a table of contents that easily helps me navigate from the DWG file over to that first SOP, over to that second SOP. And then finally, what we're also going to be able to do is, and that's not really depicted here, but using RAI link, I also thought it would be pretty neat for us to be able to see, one, what does a summarization look like of that final merged package? So once again, before someone even opens the PDF, they have a good understanding of what they're walking into. And two, let's start extracting some attributes as well. So can I take that merged output, and even though it's multiple different files, can I start extracting a little information from the DWG? Can I start extracting a little information from that SOP that's gone through 3 revisions, or that other SOP that seemed to be pretty good throughout the entire lifeline?
Okay, I think that's a great summary. If you don't mind jumping into the demo for the merge steps 3 and 4, that was great.
All right, so what we're going to do is one last time, we're going to release our documents into the final approval stage. We'll refresh here, and what you're seeing now is, and this will be a little lengthier because now what we're doing is we're going to take every single one of those documents, going back to what you saw in the day in the life slide, we now want to merge every single one of those documents together. And in case any of those documents may not have been fully OCR'd up to this point, even though they should have been, we're going to do one clean OCR to make sure that we can now set up our LLM for the extraction and the summarization. So that LLM is now going to receive that OCR extracted text and start summarizing all of the content that it's seeing across all of our initial documents that we walked through, as well as starting to pull out all of those attributes now based on the prompt engineering, which once again, we can dive a little bit deeper into in the technical part of the demonstration.
Right, you mentioned, I think in the step 3 and 4, bookmarks and table of contents.
Mhm.
So that's happening now here as well. So help us understand, how we're creating bookmarks and table of contents from a merged file set.
Yeah, so it's pretty neat. So what we're going to do is, first of all, for each individual document, so you noticed in the SOP, we had like a purpose section, a scope section, a section that detailed a proper hand washing procedure. So first and foremost, for each individual document, we're going to bookmark, purpose, scope, proper hand washing procedure. But then from a larger view, with each and every merged document, I know that I have a bunch of different files in here. I want to be able to easily identify how to get to my DWG file, and then from one bookmark to another, how to get to my first SOP, from one bookmark to another, how to get to my next SOP. And so we're really not just bookmarking the contents of each individual document for its metadata, but we're also bookmarking how to get from one document to the next very easily, so that it's kind of easy to navigate that final merge document. You don't necessarily need to go scrolling through to look for what you need.
Okay.
All right, perfect. And we can see that that was completed successfully. So I'll go to my output here, and you're going to see 3 different files. You have our final output PDF. We have this document over here, which actually summarized the content of our merged PDF. And then we have, get out of that. We also have our final JSON file here, which actually went ahead and extracted attributes from that merged document as well. So whenever you're ready, we can start diving into those one by one.
I think the first step is to show the PDF, and that JSON files probably make more sense.
All right, so what you're going to see here, a couple different things. So right off the top, if you look at this banner up at the top, hopefully that's readable, but that's saying this file claims compliance with PDFA standard and has been operated to read only to prevent modification. So if we think back to our day in the life slide, what I wanted to do was make sure that this was now locked for editing. It was created for long-term archival, and you can see here that this little banner up at the top validates that all that was done successfully. We also have our bookmarks along the left-hand side here. So as I mentioned, first and foremost, to your question earlier, Anthony, we have our manufacturing table of contents. If I click here, you'll see that that bookmark is taking me to the DWG. This bookmark just took me to that image file. This bookmark took me to the SOP. And now if you look below the SOP, that now has its own level of bookmarks. And these bookmarks are going to take me to different sections within the SOP. So you're seeing here how Adlib has made it very easy for me to navigate not only the contents in each individual document, but to be able to navigate easily from each document that was merged. And then another thing I'll mention here is if we take a look at the revision history in this SOP, you can see that it's gone through 3 different revisions. Each individual has marked when they, what stage in the funnel they took part in, whether it was the initial release or the review. And then finally, we can see here as well that the track changes and the comments are no longer visible because all of that has been implemented into this final revision. And so you're not going to see that in this final view anymore.
All right. So can you get to use the bookmarks to get to the section, which is DWG?
Yep.
All right. And you can see in this DWG file, there's data that might be helpful to a downstream line of business application.
Right.
All right. So I think now is a good opportunity to showcase how Adlib can extract that information, and that information has been extracted and is part and parcel of that first JSON file.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is we will go over to this first JSON file here. And you'll see here right off the bat that we started here with our DWG file and looking to extract information from that directly. So we have, let me see if I can pop these open side by side for us to walk through it. That might, never mind, that my monitor is not big enough to do that. So we'll go tab by tab here. So we had our revision history that we were looking for. As well as I'll go over a couple different pieces of information and we can take a look back at the original drawing. We have the revision history, which was seen as version 1.0. We have our drawing title. We have our drawing number. We also have the sheet info. So this is sheet 1 of 1. We have the scale of the document. And as we start to take a look back, you can see all of that. If we look in the bottom right-hand side here, where in most CAD drawings, that information is typically covered. You have your title, you have your drawing number, you have your sheet 1 of 1, and you have your scale, which is 1 to 60 over here. But not just necessarily the information in the bottom right there. What I wanted to see if we can do is now, instead of just pulling out some of this information, let's actually go to the drawing itself and start to give me different dimensions, start to give me information about the drive side. So it's a left side drive as shown on the drawing. I now have the panel dimensions. I now have the opening width, the opening height, the mounting type. So you can see here that more than just kind of pulling in general information about the CAD file, I can actually get it to start going into the drawing itself and giving me particular dimensions and information that would be really relevant to know about the final piece.
All right. And this is an important point because many of the customers that we've spoken to, some of them have applications that are able to extract information from the title block using technology that's not AI based. What we have the ability to do here is not only the title block extraction, but anything of interest that may be in this document is extractable and can be used in your downstream process.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So I think that's a good example of individual fields that can be extracted. But you mentioned earlier something related to a summary of the entire document.
Yeah, definitely. So what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and minimize. Actually, just before we get to that, one thing I'll quickly mention before we pivot is it just came to mind is, as you know, we merged a couple different files together. So not only do we have this DWG, we have this SOP, we have this flow chart over here, we have another SOP. And so what's really, really cool about our LLM extraction is it also had the intelligence to be able to easily, from that merged file, when I'm looking for attributes of the DWG file, give me attributes of the DWG. If we scroll a little further down, I started wanting to pull out attributes of our hand wash SOP that we've been working with. And I now have the SOP version, which you can see is in its final version of 3.0. I have its effective date. I have the SOP ID. But if you recall, we had 2 SOPs. So I'm now actually using my LLM to go through this whole merge file, not just go between the DWG and SOP, but actually get me the attributes from both individual SOPs out of one entire merge document. So now I have my cold storage SOP ID and version and effective date and all the following associated attributes underneath that as well. So I just wanted to quickly highlight that before we got to the summarization.
That was a good ad. Thank you for doing that.
All right, now once we get into the summary, you'll be able to start to see now we have a summary of the submitted manufacturing documents. Is that readable? Or do you need me to zoom in a little bit?
I can read it. It looks good to me.
Okay, perfect. So we have, now it's going to start going through, like we have our table of contents and overview. It includes sections on the purpose, the scope, responsibilities, materials. You can see here that it's going over. So if we take a look at the scope or procedure, it's documenting that we had steps included in hand washing, donning PPE, using touchless controls. We have quality notes that were listed here from our second SOP. And realistically, what you're also going to see here is I asked my LLM, and we can get into this in the technical review, to keep the summary concise. So even though we have a lot that we merged together, try to summarize this in about 150 words or less, because I didn't want to overwhelm the amount of information that we saw in the demo here. But if I wanted a really deep, detailed, concise summarization of every single page that was included here, I could actually configure it to do exactly that as well. So it's really all based on how you want to prompt the LLM and the type of results that you're expecting on the other end.
Okay, great. I think that's everything from the files. So can you go back to the PowerPoint and we'll just close out that portion of the demo? So just to kind of replay what you've just seen, steps 1 through 4, we broke this down into 3 smaller segments. But these things, as Kunal had mentioned, would be triggers that happen in your particular system of record when they're ready to hit for review, when they're ready to hit for approve. That's triggered off of whatever system you have. Adlib will then take that job and do the work as you've seen here. So hopefully you would agree that this removes a lot of the manual effort required to make your documents PDF, to add the table of contents and the bookmarks, to do the summarization, to extract any of the key values, to make certain that all the approvers or anyone in the pipeline has been incorporated into that audit trail. All that was done just in a matter of, from the end user perspective, a couple of button presses in your system of record. Anything you'd like to add before we pause on the end user experience to get to the more technical experience?
No, I think that's perfect.
All right, so for those that are technical, this is probably more up your alley. What we're going to do now is showcase some of the configuration that was done to make this happen. So, perfect. So what we're going to do now is if you can jump to the demo environment again. And the first question I would have, which is largely around what you were doing in step 1, 2, and some of 3, which was manipulating documents to add watermarks and headers and footers and so on. So help us understand it is what you're looking at right now, and how might you go configure for those particular things.
Yeah, so I'll go to one of the instruction sets that we use to configure this demo, and we can start to walk through that. So what you'll see here is along the left-hand side, we have a variety of different rules that can be configured in the system. And I know I mentioned at the top that we have a broad range of different files that we can support. So for example, if I open this convert to PDF, you can see a different set of files that we can kind of drag and drop over to the right-hand side and start kind of configuring and playing around with exactly how we want that to look on the other end. Let's take a look, for example, at the watermark. We'll start a little simpler. So first and foremost, we wanted a watermark with review complete. And it was as simple as dragging it over and typing in review complete as the text that I wanted it to display as. I can then go ahead and choose the font that I want to use. I can choose the font color as well. So for example, I wanted it to display as red. I can choose the size, the opacity, but really with just a couple easy checkboxes, color sliders, form fields here to type into, you can really easily start to define exactly what it is that you're looking to do and how you want it to be displayed on the other end. Now that's number 1. Number 2 is we saw during the review stage that document, if we actually, let me quickly go back so we could take a look at it, and then we can go back to the settings itself. We saw that this PDF here had the ability to, for example, if we look at the version number, the new version for version 2 was blue and underlined. We got rid of version 1 that had a red strike through. The way that I chose to set this up is, first of all, I checked off this box that says review. And what that allows me to do is simply put, track any changes that were being made from one version to the other. So I wanted to enable viewing all of my comments in the end PDF. I wanted to enable viewing all insertions and deletions. But what I also did was, you can actually go as far as to tell Adlib, hey, by the way, when I have an inserted text, I want that to show up in the color blue. And not just that, but I want it to be underlined. When I have deleted text, I want that to be the color red, and I also want that to have a strike through it so that it's very clear to me that this is deleted text versus inserted text. And you can see here that we have a variety of different options in terms of what you want to do for the color or the text mark when something has been edited. But hopefully what you're starting to see here is there's no crazy coding or high complexity configuration that I'm doing here. I'm really just kind of dropping down accordions, checking off some boxes, potentially some drop downs or typing in some information. And based off of that information, I'm now getting these super, super rich structured documents on the other end. And I'll pause there, see if that sort of answers the first part of your question.
All right, so there you have the ability for the Word documents. That's what you added your hyperlinks and your bookmarks and your table of contents and so on.
Mhm.
The file conversion portion of it. So right now in your rule set, it looks like you're converting from Word, watermark, and OCR. What might it look like if you were had that DWG file and that GIF file as an example? Is there anything different you need to do in the configuration?
No, not at all. So what I did here was all of this actually helped convert my CAD files, my image files, but we don't require you to have to drag it over to start configuring it. The only time you're required to start doing that is, let's say, outside of just converting CAD to PDF, which I could do just by dropping a file into any folder. Let's say I wanted to start doing some customizations. What I can easily do is drag and drop CAD to the right-hand side, click this little pencil icon. And now if I want to start configuring, create my layers, if I wanted to generate my layout order, if I wanted to add bookmarks in the CAD document itself, now this is where I have the ability to start getting very, very specific, similar to what you just saw with the Word document, get very, very specific with the customizations of what exactly I expect on the other end once that CAD file has been converted to PDF. And similarly, whether it's CAD, whether we're working with Word, whether we're working with something like Microsoft Excel, it's going to be the same procedure of drag and drop over to the right-hand side, open up the settings, and then start tweaking what exactly you're looking for.
All right, thank you so much for that. I see behind the screen there, if you close that window, that there was this AI extraction
Yes.
tool in there. So I know during the demonstration, you showcased a couple of things around summary and data extraction. So sounds complex, data scientist type complex. So help us understand what Adlib has done to simplify the experience for all.
Yeah, so, well, I'll start here. I'll pop open this little rule set, and then we'll take a step back and see how it all kind of comes together. If I click this pencil icon, this actual field to configure my extraction is 3 little simple fields and 1 more if you want to do some human in the loop intervention. What I'm doing is I'm defining a template, the output definition, and the provider. Now, the provider we've already spoken to a little bit with the whole bring your own LLM service, and this would essentially be your provider that your organization has provisioned and the LLM of your choosing. So let's focus not so much on that, but a little more on the output definition and the template. If we move over, I'll just cancel those new changes I added there. And if we move over to our extraction settings, you can see very similar to what you just saw on that field, what mapped back, a template section and an output definition section. So let's think about what we saw today. Today, we saw me do 2 things. We saw me do a summarization and we saw me extract some attributes. One of these templates, so really, if we think about what a template is, it's kind of that overarching logic or overarching set of rules that we want to give the chatbot is today you're going to be taking documents and you're going to be summarizing the content, or you're going to be extracting attributes, or you're going to be translating from one language to another. But this is really sort of that overarching processing logic is the way I like to think about it, of what am I actually going to be doing with the OCR extracted text. Then we get into our output definitions. And then this is where we start to, similar to what output definitions is meant to convey, is defining my outputs. So for example, if we go over here to our manufacturing summarization, what I did here was say, today you're going to be receiving a merged document or a set of individual documents that relate to manufacturing. This can include CAD drawings, SOP forms, etc. So really, at this point, this is up to you on kind of how much you want to prompt this model and how much you want to prompt it to kind of make sure you're getting the output that you're expecting. Your job is to summarize the content of the submission. Don't exceed 150 words. Please structure the summary neatly in human readable format. But if we also remember, aside from that end summarization of the entire document, there was another summarization that I did where I said, you're going to receive documents that have comments and track changes enabled. Please just summarize the comments in the document as well as any track changes, but do not summarize the content of the document itself. So you can see here that even though I used the same sort of Adlib structure, the way you prompt the LLM will help it understand, do I want the comments? Do I want the content of the document? Do I want something else altogether? How lengthy do I want it to be? But that's really fully in your control.
All right, so I guess the thing I'd point out here, just to repeat, you did this and you're not a data scientist, and you saw here what Adlib has done is we've essentially allowed in human language you to put it into context the same way you would talk to your friend or colleague. In this case, you're just typing that in to this particular box here. That context is then translated by Adlib to the large language model or AI platform of your choice, and we become the universal translator for that particular large language model. We then get the result, whether it be the summarization or the extraction, and we package that up for your downstream line of business. So this content and data is AI ready.
That's correct. And very similar to the summarization, when we extract the output, same thing. No No data scientist background required. It was really just as simple as adding an attribute that I wanted to extract, giving it a name, hitting OK, and then it goes into my list. And now when I submit a document, this is all of the attributes that it's going to work against to find within my documents and extract. And it really is just that simple.
Okay, outstanding. Before we jump over to the presentation again and get to Q&A, is there anything else you'd like to cover or highlight in the technical side of this demo?
No, I believe that covers everything I wanted to walk through as well.
All right, great. So if you can go back to the PowerPoint, we'll close out here and get to a few questions.
For sure.
As a reminder, if you have any questions, the Q&A panel is available to you. You can type your questions there. All right, next slide, please. So what we've done here as part of today's demo is the day in the life of this SOP coordinator. However, you think about your business, there are many documents that you have that would require some structure, being converted to PDFA for archival, may require or benefit from having some summarization done, maybe have the audit trail and version control done. So while we focus on this SOP workflow today, think about your product lifecycle management, how you execute on your shop floor, how you're driving quality and compliance within your organization, any environmental reporting that you may have, any corrective actions or preventative action routines that you may have. We know for a fact that all these document processes are document intensive, and Adlib has a history of satisfying and automating these processes for customers such as yourself. Okay, so just give that keep that in mind as you're reviewing the content today. It's just not focused on SOP, but any documents that would require structure and repetitive manual labor prevention or removal altogether. That's where Adlib specializes. So next slide, please. Okay, so now we're at the point where we will address any questions that you have. Thank you, Kunal, for once again your experience and time to put together the demo here today. A reminder, Kunal is on the pre-sales engineer team, obviously very talented and knowledgeable about the product. So if you have any questions or want to walk through a particular use case with your Adlib sales team, you have the opportunity there to scan that QR code. That QR code will take you to a Calendly invite where you have the ability to book some dedicated time with an Adlib resource. So this QR code will remain on the screen as we get to your questions. The first question, I have no idea if these are typed in order or how they come to my screen, but can we integrate this workflow with our existing approval process in QMS? So feel free to kick off on that one.
Yeah, so similar to what Anthony and I had discussed earlier in the demo, and hopefully that kind of helped answer that question, but absolutely, I would in fact go as far as to say that is probably the intended use case for what you saw today, is being able to integrate this workflow within your own QMS so that, once again, you have a very, very simple flow with just a matter of clicking some buttons. Everything you saw today happens on the back end. All you really see is documents come in, documents go out, and they move through the approval stages as you expect.
Yeah, I would actually go a step farther for clarity. Adlib does not have any end user experience other than the admin experience. Yeah. So we will not provide to your end users an experience that they have to adapt or learn. We will simply link into your existing line of business applications, those same applications that these end users are using every day, and that's how Adlib will receive and ingest the documents that require our processing. So there is no learning required at all for your end user population. The second one, I'm going to reverse the order here because actually these questions are very similar. Do the JSON files follow a consistent schema or differ by document type? Can these easily be integrated with data lakes or other systems? All right, so the question is around JSON files, the schema as to how we create those. So you showed attributes, but you didn't actually show the schema as part of your demo. Not saying you have to go show demo, but can you talk to how you create the schema and if it can remain consistent from document type to document type?
Yeah, so the schema that you saw to be able to set up the JSON files and the type of attributes that you want are going to be consistent across any type of attribute extraction, summarization that you're looking to do. So that mapping and that flow that you saw when we got into the technical portion of it is going to be consistent across all use cases.
All right, and the second part of that question was, how do we integrate with data lakes or other systems that may require this information?
Can I defer that one to you, Anthony?
No problem. So with data warehouses and data lakes or any downstream line of business application, All of them have the desire to ingest information and data. And that's why they live. That's how they get their data. Adlib, on the flip side of that, also has a SOAP, REST API, and XML submission techniques. So our job as connective middleware is to get data to your downstream line of business applications. So together with our APIs and the APIs that these data warehouses and data lakes and other systems have, it is not a problem or a challenge to get data or documents into these systems. We know how to process them, they know how to receive them, and it's a pretty strong ecosystem that we live and play in. So that would be the answer for that one. The next question is also specific to the JSON files, but more concerned around quote unquote sensitive data being stored in the JSON file.
Yeah.
So, Kunal, on our roadmap for this coming release November, feel free if you want me to talk about it, but we have redaction capability. So why don't you talk about that here?
Yeah, exactly. So what's coming in Q4 this year, likely around the November timeframe, as Anthony mentioned, is the ability to actually redact any PIIs or sensitive information in your documents. And what we're doing is not just redacting it in, so for example, if you look at your MPDF, we're not just really redacting it there. What we're doing is making sure that that information and that data itself is redacted before it even hits the LLM. So by the time we hit the LLM and get into the process of extracting your content or summarizing your content, whatever it is that you're actually asking the LLM to do, it's as if that information doesn't exist to begin with for the LLM because it's already gone through that redaction process. So by nature, there is essentially no chance of that sensitive data being stored or captured by the LLM or in any JSON files downstream afterwards.
Perfect. This next question is different than JSON. Does your tool work on legacy SOPs that were saved as scanned files? So I'm assuming legacy content that may not be a Word or a PDF or maybe even probably just an image or a TIFF.
Yeah. Yep, and again, that's completely supported. So that's very common for us, especially for larger organizations or organizations potentially going through an M&A. There's a ton of documents that are emanating from a very, very long time ago. Potentially the only way you can get them in is a scanned file, and Adlib has 100% support for that use case. It's something that we're very, very experienced in dealing with as well, so that's not a concern.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that we're giving new life to these aged documents because whether they were scanned or an image file, we have the ability to OCR them, convert them to the same PDFA as your standard new documents of today, and run them through the same AI techniques that Kunal demonstrated to you. So, whether the document's 20 years old or 20 minutes old, for us, it's the same.
Yeah.
All right, last question here. Feel free to add more in the Q&A if there's any. What level of IT involvement is needed to configure these workflows and settings? This is a two-part question, so that's part number one.
Yeah. So for part number one, not a lot of IT involvement, I would say. Similar, hopefully the technical part of the demo gave a little light to it, but really once you start to kind of become a little comfortable in navigating the system or using, even we have a filter system in our job settings page to find the exact settings that you're looking for, it becomes a very simple drag and drop functionality. Now, of course, where it gets more complex is the more workflows you want to define, the more sources you may have be ingesting documents from, or the more different outputs that you're looking for. That's where you might get a little more complex or start configuring and playing around some metadata. So not to jump too far ahead, but I do see the second part of the question is this something that we put the onus on you, or do you get support from our team? And the short answer is that Adlib is always there to be able to support you in configuring these settings. We understand that for especially the more complex ones, that it would be helpful to have sort of that hands-on involvement. And so that's exactly what teams like our professional services team is there for, to be able to assist you with. And then the last thing I'll mention, and then Anthony, you can layer on in case there's anything I missed, is once you are sort of moving, let's say you have your established rules, you have all that set up, there's a lot of complexities in them, and you want to move from version to version one day, or you want to take parts of a rule set or a whole rule set and import it into another one, Adlib provides you the ability to very, very easily export your rules and import them into a different rule set. Or let's say you just want to take an export of a portion of it, so an export of your Word rules and your PDF processing rules, and take that into another instruction set and move it to a new version. The export and import sort of copy paste ability is very, very simple, so that users don't necessarily have to call Adlib every time they want to do something complex, even though it's already been configured. At that point, it becomes very self-serve.
When you say users, you really mean the administration and IT teams responsible for the care and feeding of this. So thank you for that. I don't have anything additional to add on that question. That is the end of the question list. So Kunal, I'm about to close out. Is there any closing remarks that you have on your side before I shut this down?
No, that'll be everything from my side. Just very appreciative everyone for taking the time to walk through the demonstration today, and I hope it was valuable.
All right. Once again, if there are any questions for individuals like Kunal, feel free to scan that QR code. I do appreciate your time. Hopefully you've learned something. If there's anything that you'd like to relay back to us, we're really strong on voice of customer, as it really does impact how we build and what we build and in what order. So you do have the ability to impact our roadmap in a really meaningful way. But I do appreciate your time. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.